Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. Earlier today, the Supreme Court rejected a plea to allow Jallikattu in Tamil Nadu during Pongal. The court said it was unfair of the petitioner to ask the bench to pass an order before Saturday. This means that the 2014 ban on Jallikattu continues to be on force. The only hope now is if the central government passes an ordinance amending the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act to permit Jallikattu. Tonight we take a look at the situation, the law and the clash between animal rights and centuries-old tradition and culture. My guests are the former editor-in-chief of the Hindu N. Ravi, the well-known Supreme Court lawyer C.R.M.S. Sundaram, animal rights activist Gauri Moleki, AIA DMK spokesperson C.R. Saraswati and DMK spokesperson Manu Sundaram. Manu Sundaram, today the Supreme Court rejected a plea to allow Jallikattu during the Pongal festival on the grounds that it was unfair of the petitioner to ask the bench to pass an order before Saturday, which is just 48 hours away. How do you respond to that stand taken by the Supreme Court?
Well, we respond with dismay and unhappiness because we expected the Supreme Court to take into consideration the sentiments of the people. But before I delve any further, Mr. Thapa, I was on my way here and I usually walk past a school ground where some children were playing cricket and I saw a couple of the older boys beating up a younger one. Now, if we had to use the Jallikattu analogy, we would have to go and ban the sport of cricket from the state of Tamil Nadu because there was an incident of violence and harm and cruelty. But you know, the larger question here is, yes, the legal avenue may be shut down by the Supreme Court from the 2014 verdict, but there are political options still open. The centre, like you pointed out, can pass an ordinance amending the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. And the substantial issue remains that can a question of custom and culture be seen very narrowly through the prism of animal rights as interpreted by the Supreme Court. While I have a lot of humility for the 2014 verdict, I still think it is based on a misreading of facts and a misplaced understanding of what animal rights and what Jallikattu is.
C.R.M.S. Sundaram, the truth of the matter is that this case has been under review by the Supreme Court for a while. And a report on the Hindustan Times website today says that a draft of the Supreme Court's judgment has already been prepared and is ready. In that case, and given the emotions this issue has aroused, why could the Supreme Court not have expedited matters and made its decision known before Saturday? After all, if the draft is ready, why not make it public?
I think, Arun, your question really stems from what I am afraid is a common misapprehension of the correct factual position. This is not so. In 2014, the Supreme Court gave a final verdict as to the cruelty of Jallikattu, banning it. Now, that was a final order. To get over the order, the government came out with a notification, in which notification they tried to bring in an exception to the bull being in the schedule and therefore a protected species by saying activities, and I'm just quoting one of the activities, like Jallikattu, would not come within the purview of the protection to bulls. Now that was questioned by a separate case last year and that was stayed. Now that is the case on that particular government notification which is pending adjudication. Last year, a stay was asked for, a stay was granted. Thereafter, petitions were moved to vacate the stay, and very much like what is happening now on the last day before Pongal last year, again, there were mentions made, applications filed to vacate the stay, and the Supreme Court said, no, we are not vacating the stay. We have stayed the ordinance because it seems to be against the 2014 judgment. Thereafter, the other side felt that, look here, we want the 2014 judgment to be reviewed, since that judgment seems to be standing in our way when we want to defend the government notification. Now that review was heard in detail and the review was dismissed. So the 2014 judgment holds the field in all force. What is pending before the court is that despite the 2014 judgment, a government notification trying to completely dilute that judgment and going against the Parent Act itself, which has been stayed by the Supreme Court, it's the arguments in that and that which is pending judgment. In that, there has already been an application for stay, stay granted, application moved to vacate the stay, vacate stay was rejected last year, and last year at the last moment it was done. That's why I find it very puzzling. What happened? All right, the judgment was there, there was a stay, vacate stay was not granted last year. If they had moved it a month ago, 2 months ago, the whole purpose of this is to create a fervor 2 days before Pongal as though it's a life and death situation. Same thing was tried last year and the Supreme Court said, sorry, we have granted a stay, we are sticking to our stay. So it's a complete misapprehension of facts as though the whole matter is under review of the Supreme Court. It is not.
You've given
Mr. Cruelty to animals.
Mr. Sundaram, you've given a comprehensive answer. Let me stop you there because it's full of detail, but not very easy for people to follow. But the key point that you made, I want to put to N. Ravi, and the key point buried in that detail, N. Ravi, is that this is a bit of a show, not just of defiance, but to try and appease popular sentiment. We know the Supreme Court's position. The Supreme Court's position has been made clear multiple times. Therefore, does the Supreme Court need once again to clarify its position simply because popular demand and a need to appease popular opinion is being felt because Pongal is around the corner? That's the key issue Mr. Sundaram was raising. What's your answer to that, N. Ravi?
I think I understand the situation the political parties are placed in because Jallikattu has come to be identified with Tamil sentiment for some reason. This is the season of festive, this is the festive Pongal season of bountiful harvest sharing, meeting friends and even venerating cattle and feeding them. And I think personally that the state can do without a festival that involves cruelty to animals and danger to human beings. So that said, the question of the last minute appeals have been the pattern in this case for quite some time, and appeals to the central government to bring in ordinances or notifications and the court to review and remove this ban and so on. So this has been a typical pattern for the last 2 or 3 years.
And you're suggesting that this is simply an attempt to appease opinion and the court doesn't need to step in and comply and keep reiterating its order. Let me bring in Ms. Saraswati at that point. Ms. Saraswati, your new General Secretary has asked the Prime Minister to issue an ordinance amending the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act so that Jallikattu can be practiced on Pongal. But given that an earlier ordinance allowing Jallikattu in 2017 is under question and in fact has been stayed, how can she ask the government to issue a second one? Would that not be defiance of the court?
First, sir, I want to request you one thing. The pictures you're showing in the screen, what happened to Jallikattu, this is not recently taken. This is quite long years before. In between, the case went to the court by the animal lovers and court gave some directions that you should not catch the tail and all. After that, we are not doing that. We stopped it. This is quite old pictures. I want to request you. After the court said, we are not doing this first. Another thing is, I am also animal lover. I am a Blue Cross member.
Okay.
And the bull has been treated like a children in each and every house of Tamil Nadu.
Ms. Saraswati, I accept your point that the footage on screen is old and we will stop showing it. But can you now come to my question?
It's not a question of stopping, but this is not happening now.
Yes.
I'm not telling you to stop, but this is not happening now.
Let's not get deflected on a side issue.
This is quite long years before.
Ms. Saraswati,
now we are treating as what court said, we are treating bulls like that only.
Ms. Saraswati, pause and listen to me, please.
Yes.
Let's not get deflected on a side issue. I accept the point you're making that this is an old footage, it's not happening.
Not that. I've
accepted that, Ms. Saraswati. Can you now answer my question?
Like that.
Ms. Saraswati, can you answer my question, please? And I'll repeat it in case you've forgotten
please tell me.
How can your General Secretary ask the Prime Minister to issue an ordinance amending the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act so that Jallikattu can be practiced on Pongal when an earlier ordinance permitting Jallikattu is in question under the Supreme Court and in fact it has been stayed? To issue a second ordinance at this point of time would be defiance of the court.
Why can't we request the Honorable Supreme Court? Our late Chief Minister, our lovable Amma, so many times, even when she meets the Honorable Prime Minister, she used to keep the request because we want Jallikattu back. Even in Supreme Court, our lawyers gave the same request that we want this cultural game. It is for long, long years. It's our culture. So as for now, our General Secretary, our Honorable Chinnamma, has requested in our Amma's way. What is wrong in it?
But
She's a
how
big
can you
party's General
request the
Secretary.
government
Today we are
to
a ruling
reissue an
party.
ordinance
As a ruling
when an
party,
earlier ordinance to the same effect is under question in the Supreme Court? It will be defiance of the court. That's what's wrong with it.
anybody can request in this case because this is not a political issue. This is people issue. Not a
All
single
right.
person is suffering for today. All Tamil Nadu is requesting this.
All right.
Tamil Nadu is asking the Supreme Court
this is
to
not
release
just
it.
a matter of anyone wanting to request what they want. This is a matter of judicial propriety. Before I come to Ms. Moleki, let me come to Mr. Sundaram as a lawyer to clarify. It may seem like a small technical point, Mr. Sundaram, but it is in fact, Arima Sundaram, a very important one. When one ordinance permitting Jallikattu is under question and actually stayed by the Supreme Court, can the government proceed at that point to issue a second which achieves the same end? Or would that be defiance of the court?
You see, this is exactly what's puzzling me, Karan, because the earlier notification has been stayed. If you come up with another notification to the same effect, I don't see how you can do it. So I believe that what is really being asked for is an amendment to the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act itself, which is a very major exercise. What are you going to do? Amend sections of the act to say that bulls are not protected species, that they will be removed from the schedule, that you're free to use bulls for performing.
Yes.
It is
Forgive me,
large-scale
Mr. Sundaram.
amendments of the act itself.
Mr. Sundaram,
Now,
that is
even if that is
precisely
done, that
what
can be
Shashi
challenged.
Kala has
But
asked
that
the
is not
government to
possible.
do. She's asked them to amend the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act so that the prohibition about bulls being used can be lifted.
I think it is amazing, Karan, I think it would be amazing if they can bring in an amendment to the act within one day, whether through ordinance or otherwise, which will have such far-reaching effect. It's not amending one section, you'll have to amend a whole lot of sections.
Okay.
Second, how do you bring it out of the constitutional protection under Article 39? Even if the act is amended, it will still fall foul of Article 39.
In other words,
Which talks about the importance to protect animals.
In other words, the practical difficulties make it impossible for any government to act upon the request from Shashi Kala that an ordinance should be issued amending the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. Let's at this point broaden our discussion. So far we've discussed steps that could be taken to try and make Jallikattu possible on Pongal. Let's come to the bigger, wider discussion that underlies it, Gauri Boleki, and that's to do with the essential complaint that you have about Jallikattu, that it's cruel. My question is this: if traditional sports like bullfighting in Spain are permissible because they're part of the country's culture and tradition, and no Spaniard would ban it, despite the fact it is extremely cruel to the bull, why then can't Jallikattu be permitted in Tamil Nadu on the same grounds?
Well, a lot of changes have been brought to the bullfighting in Spain as well. But in India, we are a country that has always upheld ahimsa as a bedrock of all our culture. Whatever the individual cultures of various states may be, it's ahimsa and compassion that is the underlying factor, and it's even in the constitution.
Really?
It's been bestowed as a duty.
I mean, I'm very interested in that. Have you forgotten about the Battle of Kalinga and the thousands, allegedly tens of thousands, that Ashok killed? What happened to the culture of ahimsa then? I mean, we manufacture this concoction about India being non-violent when we want to present that image to the world. Jallikattu is much a part of our tradition, as this claim that we have ahimsa as part of our tradition. You're suddenly concocting one to undermine the other.
We became India only in 1947, and we got the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act only in 1960. So let's talk henceforth.
Well, why?
Before that, we may have the
tradition and
Mughals
culture of our country goes back a lot longer. You don't
even the
undermine it
Mahabharata,
simply because you became
we
independent
really can't
in
have the
47.
Mahabharata in this day and age.
Now, hang on a second. Why are you sacrificing and undermining traditions
Well, we need to
and
move
cultures
forward.
that go back centuries?
If we keep going backwards, we'll one fine day, Karan, if we keep moving backwards, we'll find ourselves in caves.
No,
so
hang on a
let's not
second.
look
It's not a
at the
question of
back,
finding
to
yourself in
what
caves.
happened in past history
The
and how
Spaniards
many
practiced
massacres
bullfighting.
and
They have
genocides
no
may have
problem with
taken
it.
place at the back, only to justify what we want to do in the future.
Okay, Manu Sandram, let me bring you in on that key point. What you're hearing from Gauri Molekhi is that culture and tradition may be fine, but India in 47 is a different country thereafter, that we have taken and made a commitment to protect animals. And the essential point she's making is that what is more important, centuries of tradition and culture that disregard the welfare of animals, or a modern day attitude that says cruelty is not permissible even if old tradition sanctifies it? It's a clear choice she's making. She's come down on the side of modern day attitudes. Why are you on the side of tradition at the cost of the welfare of animals?
Well, we are not. That's a popular misconception. If I can clarify myself and our party stand, we are not for cruelty to animals. We believe that there is no dichotomy, as has been put forth by some of the people who support the ban, that either you hold Jallikattu or you treat animals cruelly. What we've argued for, Karan, Tapar, and what we hope that this series of legislative and legal actions will ultimately resolve is that there can be a Jallikattu which is strictly monitored, properly regulated, even independently audited, so that there is no cruelty to animals. Now the problems, as some of the footage is showing, is people beating the bulls, or perhaps tying something to the bulls or hurting them in a way. Now if those actions are penalized, strongly penalized, ensure that those troublemakers are face the full force of law, and ensure that Jallikattu, as it's meant to happen in a non-cruel manner, if it can just be the running of the bulls, I hope that can be allowed, right?
Okay,
I mean, without the cruelty to animals part.
Let me
just want to clarify one other thing.
Just about Manu Sundaram. Wait,
if I may.
Wait,
Sure.
Manu Sundaram. I want to put your point to N. Ravi. N. Ravi,
If I can answer this bit.
No, just a moment. I'll come to you in a moment's time, Gauri. I'm going to N. Ravi first. N. Ravi, yours is undoubtedly the most highly regarded paper in Tamil Nadu. It's almost 150 years old. Yet the Hindu has chosen to disregard tradition and take a stand against Jallikattu. Now you're hearing an argument from Manu Sundaram that it is possible to hold Jallikattu without cruelty to the animal. I imagine he has something in mind similar to perhaps the Pamplona Bull Festival. Do you believe that Jallikattu can be held without cruelty to animals, or is some measure of cruelty inevitable?
No, I think, the Supreme Court used very strong words. It said sadism and perversity are writ large in the actions of the organizers of Jallikattu. That was, even if that was earlier in 2014, even the very act, the very event involves tremendous physical and mental torture of the animal. A bull by temperament and by instinct is not used to this kind of sport. And to use the bull as a performing animal in this sport, and also exposing the so-called bull tamers to mortal danger, I think that's wholly unacceptable. And if we are going to move towards a humane society, traditions involving cruelty and danger need to be buried.
A moment ago when I was talking to you, Ms. Saraswati, you pointed out that the footage we're showing is old, that those practices no longer happen, that Jallikattu happens in a way in which cruelty to the bull is minimized or not there at all. But bulls aren't born to be chased by human beings as playthings. That itself is degrading of the animal. And clearly, to get them to chase, you have to provoke them, and you provoke them by pricking them, which happens in bullfights in Spain as well. So how do you respond to the point made by N. Ravi that this itself is degrading of the animal? This is not what the animal is meant for.
Mr. Karan, I can clearly say, in this bullfight for so many years, none of the bull has been died. Lot of human beings gave their life in this fight and in this game. They never, not even one bull has been died, as like you said, in Spain. They never treat the bulls like what they do in Spain. And you can see even now, lot of people, they are appreciating, because it is like our children in a home. We take, not every day we are having a bullfights here. Only on Pongal day. For Pongal 365 days, only one day we are doing this culture grave. After that, all 364 days, the bull will be in our house like one of our family members. We take care like not even family members, more than that.
So
more
because
than
you
children,
take care of the bull for 364 days, on the 365th you can do with it what you want.
It is a cruelty is there. It's a game. We play them as if we are playing with the children. This sometime before it happened. Then now everything stopped and they are doing us only as a game. They are not cruelty. It's not at all there in this fight.
It's a game
not
for the human beings. Is it a game for the bull? And is the bull entering into the game voluntarily or under duress because humans insist it plays?
Long years before we are using only bull cats, and for farmers are using cows. So all these things with the people, the cows and the bulls, they live with the people. They live all the time with the people. They are so useful to the people.
Okay.
How can you treat them cruelty? You will be there. There's no cruelty at all. That's why we are requesting Honorable Supreme Court and Honorable Central Government to please give us a permission and remove the bull from the performing animals list.
Let me bring in Gauri Boleki. Gauri Boleki, you were making a great point about ahimsa and India's attitude of love and affection, care and consideration to animals. And many would wish you were right. The problem is, you've forgotten the fact that in India, animal sacrifices are permitted. Goats are killed on Bakar Eid in Kashmir and in several Muslim communities. It happens, I believe, on Dussehra. By the way, Tantric Puja involves animal sacrifice, and that's intrinsically, essentially part of a Hindu tradition. And by the way, it happens at the Kamakya temple in Guwahati even these days. Now, if all of that is permissible, why is Jallikattu suddenly so abhorrent? There's no sacrifice involved in Jallikattu as far as I know.
There is a difference between practiced and permissible. So far as animal sacrifice is concerned, there are 8 states in India that have explicitly by a legislation banned animal sacrifice.
But not Kashmir.
There are various laws that govern the slaughter of animals for food. Just hear me out. I'll make this point completely and then I'll move on to the other
wherever
one.
they live. And if it is permissible to sacrifice animals for religious worship and purposes, why is Jallikattu abhorrent?
Prevention. Okay, let me make that point first. The Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act allows the killing, the destruction of an animal for the purpose of food for mankind. Now, there have been various courts such as Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh that have held repeatedly that animals cannot be sacrificed for appeasement of gods. However, the Supreme Court is right now seized of the matter of slaughter of animals in places which are not registered slaughterhouses on various occasions, such as Bakar Eid as well. That matter is before the Supreme Court. We will have a verdict very soon. I'm sure Bakar Eid is also going to be regulated by the Supreme Court.
I cannot believe the Supreme Court will strike down the killing of goats on Bakar Eid because it is part of a fundamental religious practice. And the Supreme Court would find itself going against the grain of the wishes of 170 million Muslims.
There are 2 high courts. There are 2 high courts that have held that animal sacrifice in temples has to be completely banned.
But in
fact, the Supreme Court went to the extent of banning animal sacrifice. The Supreme Court went to the extent of prohibiting movement of animals towards Nepal when they were being slaughtered over there for appeasement of gods. The export of animals was stopped from India. In fact, the 4 border states have been asked to
all you're doing, Gauri Boleki, is to give me a bit of history and background. But the point you're not answering is that if India can accept, tolerate and allow to continue animal sacrifices, whether at Eid or whether at Dussehra, whether for Tantric Puja or at the Kamakya temple, and those are things that happen, why then do we take this anti-tradition, anti-culture stand over Jallikattu where there is no sacrifice and no killing of the bull? Surely a sense of perspective and a sense of valuing people's culture is as important as concern for animal welfare. You're pitting one against the other wrongly.
Now, Karan, what happens is We cannot, now see, in our lives we use animals in various ways, sometimes for entertainment, sometimes for food, sometimes for transport, sometimes for various other things. Now we cannot say so long as you don't stop one, you can't stop the other. You know, there are legislations as we speak. I mean, yesterday the Ministry of Environment and Forest came up with a dog breeding rule. So you cannot say, oh, since you have not stopped that, you cannot stop this. There is a legislation in place, and let me make 3 short points. One is that again and again this tradition is going on coming. This question was raised by the state of Tamil Nadu before the bench in the Supreme Court. The Honorable Judge only said that, all right, if we need to bring back all traditions, then maybe one day we'll have to bring back untouchability.
Or any
you know,
court
because some high caste people might come and
of
say
what is permissible culture and tradition. I want to put that point because it's a point of jurisprudence more than just a point of legal history to Arya
it has to be seen whether it falls within the constitutional
at the moment,
provisions
Arya
or
Sundaram,
not.
we have a situation in Tamil Nadu where popular sentiment and tradition is being pitted against the principles of the law. And tradition and culture are as important to people because they're part of their history, they're part of how they see themselves and identify themselves, as is the law. But when you pit one against the other, it's a very uncomfortable and unhappy situation, and sometimes particularly for the law, because when you put the law in conflict with ancient sanctified tradition, you're tearing a society apart. Surely the Supreme Court must realize that. Just as the Spanish have understood and accepted that bullfights are part of a tradition, we'll permit them. You regulate them, you ensure they don't become rampant, but you still permit them. Surely the Supreme Court needs to take a similar balanced stand on Jallikattu, rather than create this animosity between tradition and the law.
Karan, there are just 2 aspects in the question which you have asked, which I would like to answer. The first is we are going on the basis that there's a preponderance of public opinion in favor of Jallikattu. Let me tell you that more than 60% of the people, or even far more, 80% of the people don't even go and attend the Jallikattu. The fact is there's a very vociferous group, which is maybe large, maybe 10% of the population. I'm not going into percentages, but certainly not the majority, which is very vociferous about what they're saying. And what does happen is, because of that vociferous nature, it always excites political passions to be able to excite passions in people, and therefore politicians would try to, all of them, try to take advantage by exciting a passion. We have seen this 100 times in our country, whether it was on religion, whether it was on caste, whether it was on language. We have seen this happening 100 times, and according to me, what is really being done is there's a big fervor being created, and this is being fanned on by politicians because there's a group of people, whereas the lot who don't really follow Jallikattu and are not for Jallikattu are quite silent about it.
I'm going to stop you there.
This is aspect 1.
No, I'm going to stop you there.
Aspect 2,
I will
which is
come
the
to
more
aspect 2 in a
important
moment's
question you
time.
asked.
I'm stopping you there because your aspect 1 hinges on the credibility of your claim that only 10% of the people of Tamil Nadu are in support of this particular tradition. The others either don't attend or don't care. Let me bring in Manu Sundaram on that point. Manu Sundaram, is this a popular belief that Jallikattu must happen that is shared by the majority of Tamil Nadu, or is it limited to a vociferous and vocal 10% as Arya Sundaram claims?
I don't think there's any evidence to show either. I mean, but you know, let me just say this, because Mr. Arya Sundaram has pitted people who abide by law against politicians who are apparently vote bank catchers. You know, even when there is a vociferous or a people issue which only concerns 1% of the population, let us say the transgenders of the country, politicians are supposed to voice those issues. Politicians are supposed to reflect the aspirations of people. So it does not matter to us whether it's 10% or 90%. The DNK has stood for what the people stand for. So tomorrow the DNK will hold an agitation to ensure that the people's mood is reflected. And finally, a lot of people have commented about the 2014 judgment. Yes, it is a landmark judgment, but let us not forget that numerous judgments in the history of the Supreme Court have been rewritten, reviewed, set aside, thrown out of the piece of
but I want to come
judgment.
back to N. Ravi. N. Ravi, yours is a very thoughtful paper. Why do you believe that the tradition that has been part of Tamil Nadu's culture for centuries and with which so many people identify should be sacrificed because this sort of treatment is unacceptable. After all, if the Spanish can permit bullfighting, and it's a very good example, if they can permit the Pamplona Bull Festival, it's another good example, and still enforce laws about cruelty to animals and still hold their head high about being a civilized country, why can't Tamil Nadu find a similar balance? Permit Jallikattu, regulate it so that gross cruelty is avoided, but at the same time, don't stamp on tradition.
Karan, let me first clarify that Jallikattu is not a pan-Tamil Nadu phenomenon. It's confined to the region around Madurai and a few other pockets. And all over Tamil Nadu, Pongal festival is celebrated with other kinds of activities, not Jallikattu. That said, I would say that bullfighting, as in France, where it involves the killing of the bull, is clearly unacceptable to me, at least. I don't know if their laws permit it, their standards could be different. On the other hand, if some tradition involving cruelty and danger to life and limb has been existing for a long time, it doesn't mean that it should continue, particularly if it offends our current notions of what is right.
All right. The only question is, are current notions of what are right
and
always the correct
and also
notions change with time, mores change with time. Let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll turn to the last question. We've got roughly 36 hours before Pongal. Are there steps the government can take or should take, that may be a better way of phrasing it, that will permit Jallikattu, or would that be wrong? But for the sake of the audience, I'd like to inform you that during the commercial break, the well-known sociologist Dipankar Gupta informed me by SMS that in fact the Spanish Supreme Court has upheld the right of the Spanish people to hold bullfights, even though the Catalan High Court had earlier struck it down. The Spanish Supreme Court reversed the Catalan High Court and has ruled that bullfights in Spain are legal. C.R.M. Sundaram, let's come to the issue we're discussing, which is Jallikattu in Tamil Nadu. If Jallikattu is to happen on Pongal, as both the DMK and the AIA-DMK want, the Modi government would have to take some action within the next 36 hours. The Environment Minister Anil Dave has said that the government will look into the matter and decide what it can do. Can do doesn't necessarily mean that it will do. Can do simply means he'll explore what they can do. So let me ask you, as a lawyer, what are the government's options, or do you believe they have none?
Well, according to me, in the light of the very clear judgment of the Supreme Court of 2014, if at all anything is to be done, they will have to cure what is called, if you want to overrule or override a judgment of the Supreme Court, it's not enough to come out with an ordinance which says, notwithstanding anything the Supreme Court has said, this shall be the law, despite what the Supreme Court said. You can't do that. You have to clear the basic mischief which the Supreme Court has found when they struck down or when they decided a law. In which case, the basic mischief they have to cure is that the Supreme Court has found that the sport is cruel to the bull. Not only physical torture, even mental torture. Having a bull parading in there, they say the bull was not normally made to be chased and it's a docile animal, not made for this kind of sport at all. So it really is beyond my comprehension how you can change that basic part of the Supreme Court judgment by saying we are henceforth seeing that the mental structure of a bull will be more appeased by coming out and being treated like this, and the bull will be happy doing so, etc., etc. I can't see how it can be done because it will run the same mischief. Where if an ordinance does come out, till that ordinance is stayed, that may hold the law. But I can't see the legality of such an ordinance unless you cure the basic mischief which the Supreme Court found, which is that the sport is intrinsically cruel, with or without guidelines, with or without safeguards. It's intrinsically cruel to the animal.
Let me at that point bring in Saraswati. Ms. Saraswati, your General Secretary wants Mr. Modi to act. You've just heard R.M. Sundaram, who's a very learned lawyer, explain that actually there are very few options and probably none, because a simple ordinance will not be the answer. So what is it that Shashikala wants Mr. Modi to do that would permit Pongal and Jallikattu on Pongal? What is it that she wants?
Mr. Karan, just give me 1 minute for a only simple question for the people who's against Jallikattu. Even I am animal lover. As an animal lover, I am asking, if they want to ban the Jallikattu, will they ban the leather shoes and leather bags? Are the animals who are killed for leathers? Will they ban also?
Yeah, but
we're
going down a different route with that answer.
A lot of leather shoes and leather bags.
Ms. Saraswati, you're going down a different route with that answer. My question...
sorry, Karan, I'm answering you.
Please come to that.
What we request central government is, please remove the bull from the Performance Act. Because already we gave a lot of requestation. Even Tamil Nadu BJP leaders are saying this. Even Tamil Nadu BJP leaders want the Jallikattu to be happened in Tamil Nadu. I'm again and again I'm telling you, this is our culture. We are not cruelty. There's no cruelty. We are not treating our bull in any way, cruelty way.
Okay.
Definitely,
you're saying simply, I take your point. Look, I'm going to stop you, Ms. Saraswati, because I want a specific answer rather than a bit of explanation about you're not being cruel. I'm not saying you're cruel either, so you don't have to protest you're not cruel. Let me bring in very quickly Mr. Sundaram before I go to everyone else. Would simply removing the bull from the act suffice? Give me a short, sharp answer, Mr. Sundaram.
In my opinion, no.
In your opinion, no.
I can't be shorter or sharper.
But I get the impression from your phraseology that you're not 100% certain.
It would not suffice.
You're not 100% certain. It could do it, but you're not sure it would or it wouldn't.
I'm 100% certain it is not sufficient.
Okay.
Sorry, the act deals with cruelty to animals. What they want is to remove it from performing animals. But even if you say an animal can perform, let us assume you say an animal can perform. If there is cruelty in the performance, it will run foul of the other sections.
Okay.
It's not a mere thing of saying it is no longer an animal which is not allowed to perform. Even if you allow an animal to perform,
let me then go to Manu
the section
Sundaram.
Amended as what suggested, if it is otherwise cruel, it will run foul of the other sections.
I take your point.
Mr.
Sundaram. Let me go to Manu Sundaram. What you've heard, Manu Sundaram, is it is not possible to simply remove the word bull from the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act. That will not suffice. That will not, as to use Arima Sundaram's phraseology, cure the mischief the Supreme Court had detected when it stayed and banned Jallikattu. And further action is not possible in the time that's available to the Modi government. Are you prepared to accept that? Or do you still believe, like Ms. Saraswati, that there is something the Modi government can do?
There is much the government can do. Firstly, it's not the question of removing the bull from the performing or the trained animals list, because let me be clear, the performing and trained animals list is made for animals which are taken on circus. Hence you have
tell me what it is the Modi government can do.
Lions, etc. Now,
please tell me what it is the Modi government can do, because we are short of time. What is it you believe they can do?
They have to remove the mischief that the Supreme Court found. They have to remove cruelty from the from the Jallikattu element. They have to make sure Jallikattu is run, which is strictly monitored, like I said, independently audited, perhaps highly regulated,
that
so
Mr.
that
Sundaram
there is no cruelty.
has said cannot be done in the short time available. He's saying you can't cure the mischief as easily as you're suggesting it can be done. Why do you believe Mr. Sundaram's comment is wrong?
No, the mischief the mischief that the Supreme Court highlighted is not Jallikattu. The mischief the Supreme Court highlighted is cruelty to animals, and how the freedom of animals is seen in Jallikattu. Now, if you can run Jallikattu in a more controlled manner, in a more controlled environment, I do feel that both these things can coexist.
Okay. What controlled manner?
I'm going to go to Gauri, let me put this to you. Gauri, listen to my question before you answer. Ministers like Venkaiah Naidu have told this channel that they are personally in favor of either an ordinance or some other action by the central government that will permit Jallikattu on Pongal. In fact, if I understand Mr. Venkaiah Naidu's argument, it went something like this. Previous governments, he said, have amended the law to overturn the Shah Banu judgment. Why can't this government amend the law to permit Jallikattu? How do you respond to Mr. Venkaiah Naidu's stand?
Well, it's actually quite shocking because, and also, illogical, because you can actually amend anything. You can amend the constitution, you can amend the Indian Penal Code and remove homicide as a crime in India, completely on popular demand, if you please. What I want to say is, which I've been trying to say for the past 15 minutes, it's impossible to regulate Jallikattu and hold it in a manner that you can remove cruelty from that, because in 2012 the Tamil Nadu government came up with an act called the Tamil Nadu Regulation of Jallikattu Act, and that act was in force. The event was held. The Supreme Court sent observers to record the events in various districts in Tamil Nadu. What came back, the footage that came back before the Supreme Court when the Tamil Nadu Jallikattu Regulation Act was in force, was shocking. And that is after, it's only after that, basically the whole debate took about over 10 years. It's only after the 2012 documentation of the entire thing, and when all effort had been put in to regulate it, and it was found that there is nothing on the ground that works. The act is meaningless. The cruelty is inherent in the sport. The bull has, to be injured and bewildered and agitated in order for people to have fun with it. If it really was, like Ms. Saraswati was saying, a member of the family, well, go and hug the member of the family. It's just a bull hugging custom, right? To hug, go to a Gaushala. I go to a Gaushala, I hug a bull.
Let's not make this more polemical than this discussion anyway. Let's not make this more polemical than this discussion anyway. Let me bring in Ravi.
The bull hugging custom, no, why make a bull bewilderment custom?
Ladies, this is not an opportunity to squabble in public.
Definitely will treat bull as a child.
Miss Saraswati,
we are not treating, as what you are showing again, that it's not happened long
Miss
before
Saraswati,
years.
there are others who are waiting patiently, and it's only fair that they should be allowed to speak. You made your point,
All
Miss
the people
Saraswati.
who running the show gave an assurance. We gave an assurance in front of the court.
Can we now have a bit of decorum on this show, please, ladies? Ladies, a bit of decorum would be required.
Will be meaningless after that.
Mr. Ravi, I'm afraid that the two ladies are determined to carry on squabbling. I find it hard to give you a chance, but hopefully they'll pause, take a breath, and I'll be able to ask you questions.
The whole exercise has been done. We'll follow what court says, but we want the game back.
Can I put just switch the microphone off for both those ladies?
We want it back.
Thank you. Mr. Ravi, a very simple point, because we're coming to the end of the show. If the Spanish can find a way of ensuring within their laws, and let me tell you, their concern for animal welfare is no less than ours. It may well be greater. If they can find a way of preserving traditions like the Pamplona Bull Festival and the bullfight, and regulate it and ensure that there is no gross ill treatment of the animal, although in the bullfight, the bull is killed in the end. That doesn't happen with Jallikattu. Surely then, India too can find a way of resolving this unfortunate dispute between the law and tradition. Because otherwise, we're simply saying that we lack the capacity the Spanish have to resolve difficult issues.
Karan, I would say that bullfight is a very good example. It's several degrees worse than Jallikattu in terms of unnecessary cruelty being inflicted on the bull. But that said, I would say that maybe our ideas of what is humane, what kind of cruelty ought to be prevented is quite different from what obtains in Spain. I'm not saying this is better or not, but they weigh in on the side of tradition, we could weigh in on the side of humanism.
Can I put this to Mr. Ravi? How can you distinguish between the right to kill animals to eat them? And goats are killed, chicken are killed, fish are caught, in some Indian states cows are killed. And that's permitted by the law. And yet object to Jallikattu, where actually the bull isn't killed. I mean, if you are logically consistent, we ought to be vegetarians.
No, yes, of course. No, actually I would say what the act bans and what you are against is unnecessary cruelty being inflicted. If by the doctrine of necessity you have to slaughter an animal, you still say that humane killing or humane slaughter is still possible. without inflicting unnecessary pain or cruelty. So that's the distinction which is vital, between slaughtering animals for food and sports like Jallikattu, which involve
But you
cruelty
are
for the
in
sake
the
of
uncomfortable
entertainment.
position of saying, I won't be cruel to animals, but I uphold, reserve and fight for my right to eat those I want to eat.
Yes, in fact, that's the distinction, the doctrine of necessity, and the idea that it's only unnecessary cruelty that you're against.
Okay, I'll end there, but I'll simply raise the question, the strange concept of the doctrine of necessity, that I need to eat animals, therefore I'll uphold the right to do so. But somehow the doctrine of necessity doesn't cover Jallikattu. I mean, I'm not making a comment about you, Mr. Ravi, but I think I'm making a comment about us as human beings. We define laws and principles to suit our convenience and draw red lines where we believe we want to. And I sometimes wonder whether there's any consistency or morality that we actually practice, or whether we end up sometimes contradicting ourselves. My thanks to all my guests for joining me. This issue raises several pressing questions about us as people. We tried to touch on some of them, but clearly we haven't addressed them all, and they're questions that perhaps you should think about. If we are happy to eat animals, why is Jallikattu so abhorrent? If you have been listening, many thanks indeed. Goodbye, good night.